Excellence is being 1% better, right? Every single day. If you are at this level today, then be 1% better the next day, and then the next and the next day. So we just keep on leveling up. That's basically what excellence is all about. I think it's very important as a leader that you believe and you can bet on your team members. As a high execution person, again, it was very difficult to understand the different pacing, the different approaches of my team. The moment that you scale and the moment that you expand your team or your business, things can get very messy. And so at least you already have like a playbook. In part 1 of this series, we talked about alignment being the mindset. But let's be real, a good mindset does not execute itself. When I started leading a new department back in 2022 with 12 associates, our purpose was clear: empower our tutors to succeed. But since we were building everything from scratch, a structured framework was largely absent. And that gap between a clear why and a messy how is what kills momentum. In this episode, we are diving into 3 simple frameworks that will move you from philosophy to flawless execution, even when you're building the plane while flying it. Though not literally, okay? That is dangerous. But you get what I mean. Anyway, hello, beautiful people. This is Laura Ravina, a 28-year-old corporate leader and public speaker who is still learning out loud. And welcome to the Laura Ravina podcast, where I share my messy, beautiful journey. This is part 2 of our 4-part series where I am sharing my insights and the lessons I've learned from my mentor, Surfa, and his book, Unify, Operating as One Cohesive Performance Unit. In this episode, we are transitioning to section 2, operation, where we take a look at the practical application of alignment. When I was first made a supervisor 3 years ago, I was in charge of a brand new department. 12 people, 12 associates, 0 processes, and 1 clear mission: empower our tutors to succeed by fostering continuous growth through clear communication, value-adding opportunities, and adaptive performance support. At that time, I remember it was really, really very difficult. And so I remember what Surfa has told me, that great leaders are not time tellers, but they are clock builders. And so I realized that for us to be able to sustain our operations, we need to not solely rely on sheer effort, but also to build systems. And these systems are systems that should last beyond me. Now, a few months into the role, I started applying the frameworks shared by Surfa. And I realized that it wouldn't be easy, most especially if I am only working alone, which is why I started surrounding myself with other leaders and CEOs through the CEO Insights Asia ecosystem. And it was really vital for my experience because I learned a lot from other business leaders and other corporate leaders and even leaders with a CEO mindset. And so from that support that I have received from the ecosystem, I learned that it is very important for leaders to translate any abstract concepts into practical actions or actionable steps. And so this part of the book is actually about turning these concepts into actionable steps or practical applications so that we can clearly define our how and at the same time create frameworks or systems that will help our team. And so we are going to take a look at the parts or the chapters in section 2. We're going to break it down so that we can understand what section 2 operation really is all about. Now, section 2 operation in Unify actually is dedicated to the tools and methods that are required to put into alignment or put alignment into actual practice. Because again, mindset is not something that will solely allow you to move forward, but you have to have actual tools or methods and frameworks that you will apply so that you will be able to translate these mindsets into actionable steps. It's like completing a completing a puzzle, right? You have a mindset, and at the same time, you need to have frameworks or tools to make sure that you continue your operations. And so in section 2, there are 3 chapters, chapter 4, 5, and 6. Chapter 4 is performance fundamentals, where it introduces the GRS model, or the goal, role, and soul, which I'm going to talk about later on. Chapter 5 is performance catalyst. It focuses on mutual respect. And chapter 6 is performance protocols. It actually emphasizes the 3 Ds: design, document, and discuss. And so I am going to share with all of you the biggest lessons that I have learned from each of the chapter, and at the same time, how I am able to apply these learning into building my department at that time, and even building the division that I'm in charge of right now. So let's start with chapter 4. Again, chapter 4 is about performance fundamentals, and this introduces the GRS model, or the goal, role, and soul. I would actually say that this is a very simple and straightforward model or framework, because it focuses on aligning your team's purpose by defining the contributions and, of course, fostering values. So let's define goal, role, and soul. When I say goal, of course, this is about the team's purpose. Like, what are you expected to accomplish, or what does your team need to do in order to support the organization or the company? So that's the goal. Role, again, or role this time, is about clarifying the specific contributions of your team members. Okay? Because now that you have a goal, it's very important that everybody in your team understands how they are able to contribute to the goal, or ensure that your team succeeds and the organization succeeds as well. So you have to clearly clarify each member's role. And then lastly, S, or soul, is about the team's culture and values. One thing I always tell my team is that it's not enough for us to know our goal or where we are heading and know your role. It's also important that everybody knows and understands how everybody is expected to perform or operate or work together. Because we can have individual values or belief systems, but once we work together, it's very important that we have a shared value, or shared values, and shared belief system, or like operating system. And so that's the GRS model: goal, role, and soul. And in terms of my application, early in my career, I actually was able to use this, because when I started leading that brand new department, I immediately applied the goal, role, and soul. But I would say one significant application of this model was when I became a division head. Because at that time, I remember the entire division was operating independently. Collaboration was not, at least when I started in 2024, just last year, collaboration was not a thing, if I may say. Like, it's not really very evident in the entire division, which was very ironic, because like now that we have started collaborating with each other, the more that we understood that, okay, we need to really be able to closely work with one another. But like before that time, it was very, very difficult to work with other teams or departments. And so the application of this like GRS model was that the very first thing that I did and made sure that I would do as a division head was to really define the goal, role, and soul of the entire division. And I remember sharing with our division that our goal for as a division really is to ensure that we support our tutors. We have enough qualified tutors as well to conduct lessons and do lessons with our Japanese students. And at the same time, the quality of our tutors and the lessons that they conduct also are really like at par with the standards that we have set as an organization or as a business. So like that was the goal. And again, I shared this in part 1. We are able to trim that goal into 3 words: workforce, process, and service. Every initiative that we do is aligned with that goal. And in terms of role, I just simply told them that I believe our role as a division is to inculcate and to focus on providing excellent support to our tutors. And so that is then translated into each department, like how does excellence look like in each of the department. And then most importantly is the soul. Soul is like how is everybody again expected to operate or work together. And we have defined our division soul into 3 words. Actually, we're able to have an acronym, like we are able to use an acronym ACE, ACE, accountability, courage, and excellence. If you are part of the division, number one, you need to be accountable of your actions and the consequences of your actions and decisions. Second, you need to be courageous, meaning to say you are able to give daring feedback and receive daring feedback as well. And at the same time, work on improving yourself. And lastly is excellence, meaning to say you are expected to always go beyond expectations. And I also clarified with the team that excellence is not perfection. Okay? Excellence is being 1% better, right? Every single day. If you are at this level today, then try to do be 1% better the next day and then the next and the next day. So we just keep on leveling up. That's basically what excellence is all about. And I realized that defining the division's goal, role, and soul was really very, very helpful because it allowed the entire division to move forward. And at the same time, they're also able to define their department's goal, role, and soul. And to really cement this, we have what we call a performance scorecard. So that is where we put into writing, document the goal, and at the same time, the role of each member and the soul as well of the division. And that performance scorecard is also where we can find the success metrics of everybody. And at the same time, it is like a proof that they understood what is expected from them because they also signed that performance scorecard and I signed it as well. So basically, it's like really a documentation and a proof that we are able to tackle and talk about the division's goal, role, and soul. So basically, that's chapter 4 of section 2, performance fundamentals. You have to clearly define your team's goal, role, and soul, GRS. And now we go to chapter 5. Chapter 5 is the performance catalyst, and this talks about mutual respect. This basically argues that mutual respect is the performance catalyst, meaning to say you recognize that each member of your team is an essential driver of performance because you believe in their ability, their competencies, their character as well. And SERFA also defines it as having unshakable confidence in one another's character and skill sets. Really, I think it's very important as a leader that you believe and you can bet on your team members. And that is, I would say, something that was not quite easy for me to do at the very beginning because as a high execution person, again, it was very difficult to understand the different pacing, the different approaches of my team. Because, I was once that leader, once that person who thinks that her way is the only way. But then over time, I learned and realized that that's really not the case. Because it's like solving a math problem, right? There is like one answer, but there are different ways to solve it. There are different formulas and solutions to do it. And so like that kind of thinking was something that, or like that concept was something that I had to learn the hard way. And right now, I would really say, and I would even tell my team that I believe in their expertise, that I trust in their own judgment, and that I believe that their current best right now is working and is needed. But of course, at the same time, encouraging them to go beyond that, right? Because we have to continue growing and evolving and learning so we can get better. Now, what I'm trying to build, at least in my division, and this is a work in progress, okay, just to be very transparent, is building a culture of challenge. Again, I have very strong confidence and trust, especially in the supervisor and the managers that directly report to me. I believe in their own judgment. I believe in their assessment and evaluation of the situation and the decisions that they make. And because of that confidence, I also, again, create a culture of challenge. Meaning to say, since I believe in you, I will challenge you. Because I know that as human beings, as leaders, we have this tendency that we think, again, that our way or our way of thinking and doing things is the only way. And so I believe and I think that my role as a division head, especially to the supervisors and managers that directly report to me, is to challenge their ways. Although not all of the time, because there are really ways and processes that work. But from time to time, I always ask them questions that will make them or allow them to rethink and view things in a different lens. And if their decision, their choice is still the same, even after viewing things in different angles, then at least we are confident that we have reached a solid answer or a solid decision, right? Because we are able to look at the problem, for example, in different angles. And so that is the kind of culture that I am trying to build in the division, a culture of challenge. Because we don't want us to be comfortable with what is. One thing that I'm also gradually learning right now is comfort can be the enemy of growth, because once we get to be very comfortable with the status quo or how things are right now, it can be very difficult to evolve, to grow, and even become better. So that's something that I am still working on in the division. But going back to chapter 5, performance catalyst, this is about mutual respect. Respecting and having strong confidence on your team's abilities, character, and their skill sets. And at the same time, also being courageous enough to challenge their ideas, challenge their thinking, and challenge their way of doing things. Because at least in my experience, I believe in their potential. And I believe that they can still create a lot of possibilities. So I think that is something that we also have to think about and consider in our leadership journey. So we dive into chapter 6, the last chapter of section 2. And chapter 6 is about performance protocols, where it talks about the 3Ds. 3Ds meaning to say design, documentation, and discussion. Basically, this chapter emphasizes that aligned processes are the backbone of performance. I am not sure about you, but one of the common issues or challenges when you are in an organization or running a business or like working in corporate or like you have a company whatsoever is that processes can be misaligned at times, and that is because maybe the processes are not documented, or maybe there are a lot of processes, meaning to say yes, you know that there's a process, but it is interpreted in different ways, or the processes are also ignored. Maybe you have documented the process, but people in your team or in your business, they are not following the documented process, right? And again, that is very detrimental in terms of scaling your team or scaling your business, because things can get lost in translation. Meaning to say, as you grow, as you expand, as you scale, and the processes are not aligned at the onset, it can be very, very difficult to optimize, because you cannot optimize, you cannot improve something that is not yet standardized. And so in chapter 6, performance protocols, it talks about a framework that you can implement to formally document your processes. You start with design and then move to documentation and then discussion. So design is basically having that workflow or idea in your head and having that workflow, having that framework on how things should proceed, and then translating that idea, that workflow or framework into a documented process. So like you literally put it into writing. And then from there, you move to discussion, meaning to say you orient or train your team on how to do the process following the documented output. Now, I actually have to be very honest. I'd say that in my team right now, documentation and discussion is still something that we really have to work on. Because in terms of design, I mean, it's like everybody knows at least what they need to do initially. Like how to proceed or like how to carry on is something that we are not yet very very sure at, because most of our processes right now are either not documented or are interpreted in different ways. And documentation and discussion is something that we have to improve, largely improve as a division right now, which is why part of our success metrics or like our KPI is a performance, I mean, a process improvement rate. Basically, it is about looking at our month to month progress in documenting and automating our administrative tasks in the division. Because sometimes when we encounter problems or there's an issue, it's very challenging to make agile decisions because we don't have a document or like a reference, like a single source of truth, like a master file that we look at, right? And I have emphasized in the previous episodes that documentation is really very important because that is like one source or reference that everybody can look at when things get really messy. Because, come on, in reality, there will really be a lot of problems that your team will experience or encounter on a daily basis, like maybe 100 or hundreds of problems, right? And so, not having that document, like single source of truth, can be very difficult, especially when making decisions, because you don't have a trail of how you were, like, you don't have a track record of how you were able to solve a similar problem in the past. And so, which is why going back to our KPI or like success metrics this year, we added this process improvement rate, where we check the number of documented or automated tasks that we are able to do. And there's actually not just being too strict with when it comes to documentation, but really this is our way of holding everybody accountable, and at the same time it's like a forward looking operational metric, because every time there's a new process, then everybody's default mindset is, okay, I need to document this, and then I need to orient my team and talk about this process with my team and see how we can improve this process as well. So it's very very important, and I would say, especially when you are still starting or building your team or starting your business, at the onset, like right now, start documenting your processes. Because the moment that you scale and the moment that you expand your team or your business, things can get very messy. And so at least you already have like a playbook wherein you can always look at it and see, okay, this is how I did it in the past, or this is how it's ideally done. And so we follow this. Okay? So it's very important to follow the 3Ds as well, with your team and with your business. You design the process, you document it, and you discuss it with your team. So yeah, there you have it. The 3 core operational tools that will allow us to put alignment into practical application. And this time around, we are ready to summarize our key takeaways. So I would say my biggest learning in section 2 operation in Unify is that leadership requires a practical toolkit or practical frameworks to ensure that alignment is sustainable and to really cement this mindset with your team. And so it's very important to understand that we should not just be okay with feeling unified. Okay? Like, I feel like I am one with my team. Like, okay, that's a good feeling, but that is not enough and that is not sustainable, because we have to structure that unification. Okay? We have to structure that alignment. So we accomplish it by following the GRS model. You define the goal, role, and soul of your team, basically the culture of your team. And then you foster mutual respect to ensure honest and productive challenge within your team. And then you commit to designing, documenting, and discussing your processes with your team so that your knowledge is scalable and at the same time your systems are documented as well. So remember, when you align the mindset with the tools that you have, you build a clock that runs itself. So there you have it, everybody. That's section 2, operation of the book Unify. And of course, if this episode resonated with you, make sure to follow the Love Ravina podcast. And as mentioned in the previous episode, we also want to give you access to the ebook Unify. And so all that you have to do is leave a comment, Unify, and we are going to share with you the link to the ebook. Once again, thank you so much, Surfa, for giving us this opportunity to learn from your book, Unify. And I am very excited to share with everybody the next episodes of this series because we are going to talk about section 3 of the book, Organization. And I am going to share with all of you the holy trinity of the business in the next episode. But until next time, let us keep showing up, speaking up, and leading boldly.